Hey, it's Don here from the board. Now, this is a kind of planned semi-impromptu stream. At the moment, there's nobody watching right now, and that's perfectly fine. But it gives me a good opportunity to just get into this and stay relaxed. And I was just watching my tick counter here as I started doing this, and it takes 17 seconds. It takes 17 seconds from when I hit start streaming to it actually turning up on YouTube. So it's good to know that I've got maybe 17 seconds to wipe my nose, scratch my butt, or whatever it is that I need to do before things actually turn up on the stream. Either that or it's actually a 17-second delay, but I don't think it is, because if I start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's about 12 count. Actually, so it's probably about a 17-second delay, probably speeding up that count a bit. So, yes, today's stream is what the description says. I'm just going to be doing some random desoldering. I'm going to be taking apart a keyboard because I have a project that I want to basically do with it, and as part of that, I need to take it apart. So that's what today's all about, just going to hang out and chill. Now, you can just sit and watch, but if nobody is going to be chatting in the actual chat, I'm not going to be talking very much, simply because I won't have very much to say. So I see we've got one person joining. Thank you very much for coming along to the stream, whoever you are, much appreciated. So let's switch over to my desktop. And this is what I'm going to be taking apart today. This is the depressing 87 that I did a video about the other day, the second-hand keyboard that I picked up for $35 with the really weird grounding strap. Now, there's been some comments on that video from Gareth, which basically said there's a possibility it could be a reduction in the electromagnetic signature that the keyboard produces, the EMC, which really stands for electromagnetic compatibility. But he thought about it after I said, you know, that's really messed up because nobody else is doing it, and if this thing is producing that much electromagnetic fields, there's a major problem with this. So it probably isn't related to that. It just might be over the top electrical safety in terms of design and philosophy. But I still do not have a good solid answer to why this bonding strap exists on this keyboard. So yeah, very, very bizarre. Now I'm going to just start off by taking all the keycaps off this and putting them back into the box, because I don't want them on the actual keyboard. I'm going to have to take them off anyway at some point in time. So whoever it is that's hanging out and watching, thanks for checking out the stream, and I hope the weather is fantastic where you are, whatever time of day it is, and that you've got the time and opportunity to come along and just chill out and lurk. You might be at work, so you probably don't have the ability to chat, or maybe my chat settings show top chat rather than live chat. There we go. Okay, so it's now on live chat, so I can see what's going on. Now, since I've got this keyboard, I haven't actually cleaned it. I haven't taken all the keycaps off it, so this will be the first time it gets fully naked with me. I think that's not a terrible idea, since I didn't want to go and put all the keycaps back on it afterwards anyway the other day if I was going to fully strip it apart. Probably could do this, since it does support up to 6 keycaps. Well, that's 4. I am being probably a bit rough and quick with these keycaps, only because they're cheap ABS OEM, nothing terribly special about them. They're double shot, but if they get damaged, I'm not really gonna be too upset about it. And hello to number 2 person hanging out. Thanks for coming along and checking out the stream. Feel free to hop in a chat and say hello if you want, or you're more than welcome to just lurk as you please. Now, what's going to be interesting for me today is some of these have LEDs on them, and I've never actually desoldered LEDs, so we'll see how much of a bodge job I do on getting those LEDs off as well. Yeah. Hello, Wolves on Wallet. Thank you for saying hi. I don't actually think I've seen you on our chats, on our streams before, so thank you very much if this is actually the first time you've joined us. So, if you've just come in, I am going to be desoldering this keyboard because I have a bit of a project that I want to do with it. And of course, it involves taking the switches out of it. Now, I'm not actually going to be replacing the switches with different switches. I'm going to be doing something completely different to that kind. It's just going to be a very simple visual mod, an aesthetics mod more than anything else, but we'll have to see how that goes. I keep going back to doing them one by one, even though I know that I can do multiples with this. Shows you how often I actually do, take keycaps off. You've never caught a live stream. Well, today is the day where you've just changed that statistic. Where do you hail from, Wolves on Wallet? There I go again, doing them one by one. Not utilizing this keycap puller to its full potential. Yeah. Wolves on Wall Street. Ah, my bad. Kentucky. What's the time over there at the moment? It's probably mid-evening Sunday night, something like that. Early evening Sunday night. Wolves on Wall Street. I saw that movie, well, The Wolf of Wall Street anyway, once. Just once. Don't remember terribly much about it, but yeah. Okay, so I can see there's quite a lot of debris. Still very fine debris. There's nothing terribly major about it. What I am going to do is, hey, Mudkip Slaps. It's been a while. Did I see the SA blank group buys? I did see it on Mech Market actually, but I saw it after a lot of it had already passed. So I didn't mention it on our podcast. That said, I think it's pretty cool that people are being able to get in contact with Signature Plastics and start arranging that kind of thing. So, alright, so I'm just taking that screw off that bonding strap and I'm going to put it back on so I don't lose the screw. 7:30 on a Sunday night. What would I be doing if it was 7:30 on a Sunday night? I would probably be having dinner. Now, I did mention on the podcast the other week that the Australians are doing a bit of a group buy with Signature Plastics for grab bags to make shipping more affordable, and that has actually gone ahead. So we're getting, I think, it's like 18 grab bags sent to Australia in bulk in big boxes of 6. And then that will allow us to distribute them locally for cheaper shipping. It ends up being $77.50 for each grab bag instead of what it used to be, which was $67 with shipping. But once they changed the actual shipping rate for international, it became $100. So we're actually saving about $23 or something like that. Grab bag. You don't know what a grab bag is? Or are you just saying, what? Why would you do a group buy for a grab bag? If you're not sure what a grab bag is, of course, more than happy to explain it. The concept of the grab bag is essentially where Signature Plastics has B stock from their manufacturing runs, and they just shovel them into these 3-pound bags. That's pretty much what it is. And it can be anything that is essentially B stock or defective from their run. So I've purchased a whole bunch of grab bags, and I've been running kind of like an experiment in that how many grab bags would it take to fill up a vomit set for each profile. And so far I've got a whole bunch of you can see all my dodgy setup, but just over here and on my Instagram you can see that I've got a whole bunch of different profiles that I've been trying to build together, and I still have not successfully put together one profile keycap set for each keycap profile that Signature Plastics offers. And that's after five grab bags that I've actually purchased. So yeah, the experiment continues. So I've got another grab bag happening. Merlin got the grabs. Couldn't but love to see the magic. Yeah, Mech Merlin's pretty cool. I've never met him. I've seen some of his videos, obviously, and I've spoken to him a bit on Slack as well, in a couple of the different groups, Slack and Discord. Alright, so what I've done now with this is I've completely taken it off the case. I've disconnected the strap there. I've taken the keycaps off, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 LEDs that I will need to be aware of as well. They kind of have... See, this is really interesting, and I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to this before, but every one of these switches seem to have LED pads that have actually been soldered, like factory soldered. So it's almost like this was designed to have LEDs, but they just never bothered getting around to actually putting them in. So I do have evidence, of course, that on these particular ones you can see the, if it'll focus, it'll see there is actually little bits of the pins that stick out from the LEDs. Maybe you can kind of... No, it doesn't want to focus. Does not want to play nice at all today. Yeah, so I'll have to just make sure that I take them out as well before I try and punch out the switches later on. It'll be interesting around this sort of area where the controller is. I've got to make sure I don't screw anything up there, but it should be okay since that's where there's no switches primarily. And everything else. So what I was talking about in the other video, if you didn't catch it, was that there's a bit of corrosion that was evident on this keyboard. So you can see some down here, and there's a little bit over on this corner as well, and there's a bit of rust happening on the front of the plate. And so as part of what I'm going to be doing, you can see how it's all bubbling underneath the surface there, and it's really gone a bit weird. It's like they kind of painted over it with also spot paint in some places. Just not very high quality at all in that context, but for a relatively cheap keyboard, I guess there's not much you can do about it. Now, since I've actually got some people watching, wow, 5 people, fantastic. Thank you to everyone who's here, even if you're lurking, which is all good. Do you want me to try and desolder on the table here like this, or do you want me to lift it up higher and see if the camera is going to focus on it? Because I do have my QuadHands available that I can set up to prop up the actual working height. So let me know in the comments while I plug in my soldering line. So the trusty old TS100 is here. It's powering on. So let's get that baby racked up, and let's get it up to a good temperature. Let's bring it up to 340. We'll watch that zip, zip, zip. Okay, nobody's yet telling me if they want it lower or higher, because I do have my my baby here, my helping hands, so I can try and prop it up so it's a little bit higher, and you might be able to see a bit more. But if you guys don't want that, that's cool. We can work on the lower table surface. I have so much stuff everywhere here. It's pretty insane. Okay, so while that's happening, it's tin and clean. Nobody? Nobody? Alright, well, if that's the case, then let us just start on the desk surface maybe. Just trying to get a good position for that. Now, what I've got here is the Soldapullt desoldering iron. I picked it up not that long ago. It's got a metal barrel on it and plastic anti-static. Hello, William Woodward. Nice to see you. It's got an external spring, which I like, which is a lot better than my old one, which had an internal spring. It's got a big fat switch for it, and it's got a really comfortable sort of distance to be able to charge that plunger with a one-handed operation. So I'm assuming that these are going to be lead-free, because it's going to be RoHS. So we'll see how well 340 does to clear the solder on these. Is it done? It is not really doing much. So being difficult. Oh, there we go. It's starting to flow. And first one away. It's good to see you again, William. I believe you've come over to the streams a couple of times. I'm going to take that up to 360 just to make life a little bit easier. That was actually relatively smooth, that shot. See if I'll take the rest of that off it without lifting the pad. Alright, let's move on to the next one. I do apologize for the lighting here. It's not the world's best lighting. Don't really have studio lighting or those big reflector things, but that's something to look forward to in the future if I get a bit more money, and of course the space to actually install it. Might have to go back to that in a moment. We'll just do a quick sort of whip through and try and get these off first and see if they'll actually hold or not. I don't think 360 is doing fantastic at the moment. It is working, but it is quite a high temperature. Let's go up to 380, shall we? Now this soldering iron that I'm using, which is the TS100, the tips on it that I've only got the B3 tip on it, and it doesn't have a lot of thermal mass. So that's one aspect of doing this that does make it a bit disadvantaged. If I had, say, a chisel tip for it or something like that, then I probably would get a little bit better performance, since it would have a bit better in terms of the thermal mass that it's trying to hold heat in and dump it and distribute it. Whoa, okay, so 380 is definitely starting to be a bit better. There we go. Dropping out a lot of the shards there. So yeah, that seemed to have come loose nicely. If you got questions or whatever's happening, just chuck them in the chat, and I'll answer them as I periodically look up from this keyboard. Now, if there's any particular topics that you want me to just rabbit on, I'm happy to do that as well. You know what? Let's just go up to let's go up to 400. It's probably about the maximum operating limit here that I want to be using on this iron. Should hopefully make things a little bit faster. Now I know that some of you guys are going to be like, you should be using flux, and I probably should be, but I don't have any, so I should probably get some, hey, but that's okay. I don't actually normally use a lot of it, or would use it, simply because the solder that I normally use when I make my builds is rosin core, which means it has flux built into it. I don't do a lot of desoldering, but if I did a lot of desoldering, then I probably should think about getting some. Of course, you know, I do desoldering so infrequently that I always forget about needing to get some, and then of course when I come to do some desoldering, then it's like, oh yeah, I don't have any. And when I decided to sort of set up this live stream last night, it was kind of a bit too late for me to actually go ahead and order and get some flux, so it's probably something I should think about relatively soonish. The other trick that you can do, at least for working on this kind of thing, is you can always just put some solder, some fresh solder on it, which I will have to do when I go back and try and punch some of these out, because that contains the flux in it, and it'll help reduce the melting temperature and properties of this lead-free stuff, which is really horrible. Like, I have had to undo switches from my own builds before, and having leaded solder, it makes so much difference. It really, really genuinely does. I mean, I can understand why they want to reduce the amount of lead products that's going into landfill and whatnot, but boy, it's a pain in the backside for people like us, hey. Of course, if you prefer to solder with lead-free, then that's fantastic, it's good for you, but I can tell you right now, there's a lot of people who can happily tell you where to take that lead-free and put it. Of course, opinion is straight up just obviously everybody's own opinion and experience, but that is mine. Lead-free, hate the stuff. Now I don't know what I'm going to do with these LED bits, but I'm going to try and see if this will actually work. If I can't get these LEDs off, oh, I got some solder off it. The light's not really doing a good job of showing what's happening here. I don't think any of that came off. There we go. Got some off on that one. Now if you have any tips or hints, tricks for desoldering, let me know, or share them in the stream, in the chat for others. Now, in a worst case scenario, if I do actually kill this PCB somehow, I'm not actually too fussed, because I can always hand wire it. I've done quite a bit of hand wiring related activities now, so I'm actually fairly confident in the world of hand wiring. Unlike some people, I actually don't mind it. It's semi-challenging and therapeutic all at the same time. I don't know if anybody else out there would ever say that they find hand wiring therapeutic, but here we are. Desoldering, in a way, actually is also kind of therapeutic. Maybe.
for some people. Get that nice and hot and pull all that solder out. I think one of the things that I really love about soldering and desoldering is watching solder actually liquefy, like from its solid state. It turns into that shimmer that you see, kind of like from Terminator 2, from the metal guy, the T-2000, whatever his name is. I need to adjust that so it doesn't keep bugging me. Just watching that metal shimmer away. It gets that sheen and it ripples as it flows and heats across the solder. It's yeah, one of my favorite moments of watching solder in action. Okay, so that didn't have a full draw. There we go. A bit of shards there getting stuck. Guys are being very quiet in chat, but that's okay. I would put music on except for the fact that I don't have the ooh, I think my pump is getting a little bit clogged. There we go. Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble for broadcasting music that I don't have permission or rights to broadcasting, and I also don't have my own music that I've created, so that means you just have to listen to the regular background noises. Adam Barnett, you're late. Yes, you are, but that's okay. What switches am I removing? So I am removing some just straight up Cherry MX blues. They're coming out of a DEC Francium 87. I'm planning to do something as a mod to the board, and as part of that process I need to get these switches off. Now I'm going to put the same switches back into it, I believe. At least that's the current plan anyway. So I'm trying to desolder them as best I can to make these switches still functional afterwards. This one is being stubborn. Okay, so my iron's very very dirty at the moment, so it's just let's try and get some good cleanliness on that so it can have a bit better heat transfer. I don't have any ventilation that you can see because a lot of the solder extraction fans and stuff like that is quite noisy, and due to the sensitivity of my microphone setup, it would actually make it quite unpleasant for most people to be hearing the fan noises being caught by my microphone. So I do have a lot of space in here, so the ventilation is not really that big a deal. You'll notice obviously the smoke's going straight up and I'm staying, you know, a reasonable distance from it. It's just more that I'll probably need to clean my my camera lens and whatnot at some point, and hopefully it's not doing horrible things to my microphone because yeah, it's covering the smoke fumes will waft up to my condenser. My beautiful, lovely microphone. Wait. So I need to just yeah, retin on a regular basis, which is what I kind of forgot to do. And while I do that, let's just plunge some of those solder flakes in. Now for those who might have joined in a little bit later, I'm currently up to 400 degrees. I started at 350 with this stuff. I was hoping that it might flow a bit at that temperature. It did, but it was very, very, very slow. It wasn't really getting hot enough for me to extract it cleanly. So I am using that high temperature. Now Adam, you're asking, what mod am I thinking of doing to the switches? Nothing. I'm not actually modding the switches. So I'm going to be doing a case and plate aesthetic mod more than anything else. It's not a very groundbreaking mod, but it's something that I wanted to do that I haven't really seen other people do yet. So I don't know how well it's going to be, how successful it's going to be. Don't want to say too much about it, since if it doesn't work well, yeah, I don't want to get expectations too high, even for myself. So they're just going to go back probably as normal. I might lube them, maybe. It depends on how soon I will be doing this mod. I do have lube, as you may have seen in one of my previous videos, but I didn't do a very good job of lubing a couple of switches that I tried, because it was really finicky. Even with like a Q-tip applicator for the lube on the side of the stems, and cracking them open was also a bit of a pain in the butt too. So getting to the end of this first row. I do have other switches I could put in. I've got some box whites, got some box navies. I've still got a bunch of tactile greys, which I'm still short of for my Delta split build that I originally bought them for, which is still annoying the heck out of me, because I just haven't been able to get any from the local market secondhand, and I didn't want to make an order just specifically to go and get some box greys. They're also really expensive brand new too, by comparison to, you know, Gatorons and stuff like that. Come on. I know you want to flow. There we go. Get nice and hot for me. Oh, there you go. Come on. Probably will need to take that tip off and clean it at some point, because it's starting to get quite a bit clogged. Okay. I've got a flashing message on Slack, and what's happening there? Nothing particularly important. So, first row completed. Now, I've still got some that haven't been really well done, so I'm going to go back and see if I can just clean them up. Now, of course, I could leave it till the end, but I might as well do it as I progress. So let's just add a bit more of just normal solder, and then that way I can get a better distribution on it. That one looks okay. That one needs some. They might be okay. It's like I'm soldering and desoldering. Alright. See if I can get this one up a bit cleaner now that I've got some leaded solder on it. Heat it up and pop. There we go. Beautiful. Nice and clean. So, and that's a tip for anybody who's just starting out with desoldering, is that if you can't get all of the leaded off, and you've got unleaded, if you can't get the factory lead-free solder off, get as much of it off as you can and reflow by adding some leaded solder into it, and just heat it up and let it sort of mix in and do its thing, and it will come out a lot easier. And you can just keep repeating it. You know, don't stress too hard about it, in that if it doesn't come off on the first shot, just give it some time to cool down, add a little bit more, reflow it again, and go again. Yeah, just don't keep hammering it non-stop, because you will overheat it and you'll melt the plastic and you can damage the PCB and the pad and everything else. So I've just gone and done that, and now all of these ones that I've just touched up really quickly are super clean, because that leaded stuff is just coming out so easy, especially at this high temperature that I'm running right now. And at 400, it just comes off super easy. Super clean. Now, the tricky part is these LEDs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dust up on them as well. Now I don't actually have any solder braid, so if these don't come out, I might have to deal with them somehow afterwards, or I'd have to get some solder braid. So yeah, let's try seeing if we can get a clean removal. That one looked alright. That first one's still a bit iffy. Okay, let's try this next set. Ow. Partially burnt myself. Touching the side of that. Just be careful, of course, where you're putting your hands on these things. This is such a small iron as well that you can easily contact places that you're not meant to be contacting very quickly. And at 400 degrees, your fingers are going to know it very, very quickly. Well, that one came out really clean. That one not so clean. Come on, you can do it. Alright. So, I'm just going to clean that up a touch. Hey, we're up to 7. So, fantastic. Thank you guys for coming along. Now, that top row is done. And what I'm going to try to do now is I'm actually going to try and punch them out. So I use Allen keys, and just got to find the right size key. So that one's all right. That I can use, and essentially just put them against the back of the switch. And I heard something go pop there, and out goes the switch. So that looks fine to me. And we're just going to go back down the line. Hopefully that these will go okay. Whoa. Alright, so maybe that one's not going to come out because it hasn't been fully desoldered. That one's not likely. That one's maybe. So I've just stabbed myself on the pins from the row below, punching that switch out. This is it's dangerous work. That one's not going to come out because that one's still got stuff in there. That one's out. That one's out. Man, now here comes the moment of truth. I've got these ones with the LEDs on them. Nope. No, that one's not coming out. Maybe if I actually desoldered that one. I missed a pin. Would I say hot swaps and hold tights are worth it? That's a really hard question. The reason why that's a really hard question is because OEMs won't go to that effort, since
They're not interested in you swapping out your parts.
they want you to not be able to swap out parts conveniently and easily, so that you're more inclined to buy new ones. For enthusiasts, if you're building, or if you're doing something like what I'm doing, in that you're actually doing a mod, then hot swaps and hold tights certainly have their place. They can definitely be beneficial if you plan on doing a lot of mods. Now, you know, if I have a really rare PCB, or if I had a particular layout that I'm just constantly swapping around and playing with, then yeah, having hot swaps makes sense, because you're going to be doing a lot of work on it. If you've got like an endgame keyboard, then why would you need to keep changing it, right? It doesn't make sense. So the amount of effort and time that you're going to put into modding or adding your hot swaps, it comes down to the amount of effort that you're trying to save later on. Now, if you're not sure what you're going to do with the board and you're potentially going to be selling it to somebody, then for sure it would be worth it, because then you can be like, all right, well, I can chop and change this keyboard to suit whatever your needs if you're interested in buying it. Now, there's something that doesn't sound right in here, so I probably need to give it a clean. Yeah, that piston's getting a bit jammed. So, look at all that powder that's come out of there. The nozzle is also looking really jammed too. You hear that? It's not returning all the way. So I'm just going to give it a quick plunge through to heat that, just to get some of that powdery solder cleaned off. Heat up the tip there. There we go. Much better. Alright. Yeah, so I think if they came with factory hot swaps, that would be absolutely amazing. But if they didn't, then it's quite a bit of effort to sort of add hot swaps to an OEM board. Now, of course, if you're building a custom PCB and you get it made with, say, the Kale hot swaps on it, or hold tights, or whatever, you know, or if you install the Otemu ones because they come with their eye switches, then fantastic, you know, because you know at least you're going to be saving yourself some time later on. But a lot of people aren't going to think necessarily that far ahead when they first start in keyboards. They're going to be just, oh, you know, I'm going to get myself a keyboard. This is really sweet. And then it's only later that they'll be like, you know what, I probably should have put hot swaps in it, or something like that. Now, let's try that again. Okay, so here are the ones down the end. Look at that, just came straight out once I freed that up. Sounds absolutely horrible, the amount of force and clunk. Why is lead-free solder worse? Lead-free solder is worse only for reworking purposes because it has a higher melting temperature.
lead itself is a really soft metal. It has a lower melting temperature, so when you work with it, you don't have to work at really high temperatures to get it flowing and moving. So when you use lead-free, it really takes a lot more effort to reheat it, to sustain the heat in it, and whoosh. Okay, so the switches come out, and one of the two LED pins has come out, but I've also broken it. I snapped it. Woo! Okay, so, but that's okay. So you'll see if it'll focus. Come on, right here, right here, right here, right here. So the LED, it's not focusing, but you can kind of see the LED is holding it in, and I've broken one of the legs off it. So it's better to use rosin core because rosin core, the flux, so rosin, flux, that kind of stuff is about reducing oxidation with the environment, so you get a good clean joint and better heat transfer. Oxides are generally quite non-reactive, and that means you get stuff that stops heat activity from doing its job. So that's what the rosin aspect is about, not so much about the same issue as lead and unleaded. Okay, so look at that. I've stuffed up that LED real good. But that's okay. I can always get replacement LEDs later. But I managed to get it out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to try and reflow some of these other ones. Again. See if I can get it cleaner. It is better to use rosin core anyway, or to use a lot of flux, because that will give you considerably better results. You don't have to use rosin core as long as you have flux or rosin being used somewhere in your process. Now, if you're doing commercial quantities and you want to actually receive proper certification, you don't have a choice but to use lead-free solder. You have to, by law, internationally. But for hobbyists like us, it's actually more convenient and easier to use lead-free. And that's also part of the reason why you can still buy lead. I mean, I keep getting them mixed up. It's also part of the reason why you can still get leaded solder, because it's still a very useful, viable soldering medium. Now, of course, if they banned leaded solder, well, everybody would have to use lead-free, and then there would be no complaints, because you don't get a choice. I mean, you'd probably still get complaints from old people like myself going, when I was your age and I was desoldering switches, we had leaded solder and it was so much better. But suppose we won't know when that will happen. Bam! Okay, look at that. I got them both out. Still attached. Whether that's broken or not, I don't know. I hate LEDs. I'm going to say it right now, I hate LEDs. Somebody from our Slack the other day was actually desoldering one of their keyboards as well, and they were like, they had LEDs on them and they were taking the LEDs out. It took them an immense amount of time, and afterwards he said, I can understand why people hate desoldering LEDs. Man, I knew that before I even started on these, and I'm just going to reaffirm that opinion, because desoldering LEDs suck. Okay, so the switch came out, but the LEDs are stuck. I'm not going to try and force it, but instead I'm going to add some more and try and get them to loosen. Whoa, what just happened there?
Just loosen up some. I think it actually snapped out of the socket. Did that just come out? What have I done? Yeah, okay, so by heating up the solder, the switch popped out of the plate, but the pins of the LED actually still stayed in. So I'm gonna have to hold this like that and then just try and heat them up and get them out that way. Hey, success. Look at that. Oh, bent super badly. But you know what? You do what you need to do to get the job done. Bam. Straight out. Top row has been cleared. Hopefully that hasn't done too much damage. It looks a-okay to me. Whew, that took a lot of effort. Now, there's only, I think, one more LED on this board, which is on caps lock over here. So I might have a crack at that one first, because then the rest should come off relatively easy by comparison. 8 people. Thank you for coming along, whoever the additional new person is. I appreciate the time. Okay, just going to clean that out. It's getting really warm now, so I'm going to take my jumper off. This is still a PG rated stream. Not going to take that many more other layers off. Right, now, where is my caps lock? There it is. Okay. Caps lock LEDs. Prepare to be desoldered. Get you nice and hot. Bam. Bam. So what's happening with you guys out in the world? Let me know what you guys are up to. If you've got other questions, builds, comments about the channel or our podcast. It's pretty much a free-for-all. It's a live stream, so chat away. Ask all the important things. Yeah. I've recently just started getting into another hobby as well. Now, if you haven't been on Slack, or if you haven't listened to some of the podcast stuff, you might not have heard what I've been getting into. But I've just kind of started getting into fountain pens. It's another very expensive hobby, and I don't know how far I'm going to go into it, except for the fact that, much to my wife's amusement, I've already spent the equivalent of a Korean custom on fountain pens, but the justification there is a little bit more easy, simply because it's work related, whereas keyboards, while yes there is some utility to work, is a lot more hobby, and I've spent a lot more on keyboards than I have so far on fountain pens. And I think my wife's more than happy for me to do that, because then it means she can spend more on fabric and sewing stuff. Ah, you're into fountain pens as well, are you, Mudkips? Ah, come out from there. Punch. I don't even know where that switch went. Which one was it? Well, it's out wherever it is. Now, I'm getting all sorts of debris as I'm physically removing the switches, including, look at that, flecks of paint from the actual plate. Quality paint job right there, Deck. Quality paint job. You've got a TWSBI Echo, or TWSBI Eco, however you want to pronounce it, which is the Taiwan Sembi something or other. I can't remember what the I is, but it's a Taiwanese fountain pen company. For those who don't know what TWSBI is, I actually started with a... So there's a backstory to this, obviously, in that many years ago, when I finished high school, I was given a pen set from a family friend. It was the brand Regal, and I didn't know anything about it. It came with one cartridge, okay, one cartridge, and I used it up. And I thought that was that. I had no idea where to get fountain pen replacement cartridges or inks or anything like that. I was young, naive, and I just went, that was cool, I'm pretty much done. Same thing in that I used the ballpoint pen that was in the set, and then I thought nothing more of it, and it just sat in a drawer. A couple of years later, I went to Japan, and I went to a 100 yen shop. Think about them as like dollar stores, basically, right? Everything in there is like 100 yen. Famously, so is Daiso at the moment. Is like in other countries, and that's what they promise. In Australia, Daiso currently has everything for $2.80 because that's kind of like the equivalent of 100 yen plus tax and imports and stuff like that. Not everything is $2.80, but a lot of stuff is. So I went to a 100 yen store in Chiba because I was there on holidays visiting relatives in Chiba, and I bought these colored ink fountain pens. They were really cheap. They had like a fountain pen nib on it, but they didn't have ink cartridges. They were like highlighters. They had a fiber core. And I was using them for a while, and for whatever reason, I put them away and just stopped using them. Fast forward to about a month ago, I started looking into fountain pens again. And the backstory to this most recent period is that for work purposes, I've started to write a lot more. I started to handwrite a lot more. I never used to use an actual work diary, but since I was promoted and I became a team lead and I have to manage people, I needed to keep track of a lot more stuff that was happening. And I was taking notes, I was going to meetings and stuff like that, and I needed to write because I don't have a laptop, and there's sometimes things that, you know, need to be taken down relatively on the spot. I have really bad handwriting, and I was using rollerballs, just really cheap, nasty things that work had provided. And I was just scrolling, and I couldn't read what I was writing, and that's really bad. I need to be able to read what I'm writing. It's pretty important. It's not like uni where you could potentially fudge it and look up a lecture afterwards, or look up a book, a textbook or something like that, and get the answers that you're after. No, it doesn't work that way anymore. And so, just getting a little bit confused here because there's these pads, but there's nothing on it, and I realize it's because they just put a solder mask on it, and this is like the backspace key, so there's actually a switch in the middle here, but they've got solder pads here that have nothing on them. I'm not 100% sure what the configuration is for that, but I'm just going to ignore those pin-free pads. Anyway, whoa, I just dropped a disc of solder right down that hole. And so what happened was I started looking at other pens that I could use to write with to improve my writing. And the first thought that I had was I need to decrease the thickness of my writing. The rollerballs are really thick lines, and it was really chunky, right? And I also press really hard when I write, which can cause issues with writing and flowing with roller pens and stuff like that. They were just cheap Bics, Biros, that kind of thing. My wife
does a lot of art related stuff, and she was like, well, I've got these pens and they've got really fine points on them, and they were the Sakura Pigma Micron series. As a matter of fact, I've got some here, right? So these things, and I really enjoyed using these to write with. But one problem is, because I was so used to using a rollerball pen, I was pressing really hard when I was writing, and I discovered not that long after I was destroying the pens because I was pushing the nib of the pen into the actual core. They're normally like maybe 2 mil, anywhere up to 2 mil long, and I was in it with these tiny little stubs that was preventing me from writing properly. And that's where I ended up going to fountain pens. So another friend of mine who has been into fountain pens and calligraphy for a while posts regularly on Facebook about the stuff that she writes and gets, and she's got beautiful writing and designs, and she does, you know, handwriting practice regularly and stuff like that. And I discovered that fountain pens write with very little pressure. If you write with a fountain pen correctly, you should actually wait. The weight, you should actually be writing so the weight of the pen will actually drag the line of ink. And I thought, you know what? This is what I need to try. So that is what brought me to the modern period. Now, I did recall that I had that Regal pen, and I did recall that I had those pens from Japan, but I didn't know exactly where they were at the time. So some friends on the Australian Mech Keyboards Discord, who are also into fountain pens, recommended that I get what was called the Platinum Preppy. Now, I ordered it off the internet, and it was $7, but I had to wait for it to be shipped. And my friend also said to me that Daiso in Australia sells fountain pens, and I have a Daiso near me. So I actually went to the local Daiso, and I picked up one for, you guessed it, $2.80, and I started writing with it. And that same week, the Platinum Preppy also turned up, and I started writing with that. So they're the two first pens that I've got in my revival of fountain pen usage. I'm really enjoying writing with them to some extent. I find that the Platinum Preppy is a harder starter in that it's got like a finer tip, so it writes finer lines in it, but sometimes it doesn't start very well. It's a bit scratchy. The Daiso nib is actually smoother because I think it's a fatter tip. They're both fines. They're not extra fine tips, but it seems to write better. But it's also a wetter nib. The ink that they use, as well as just in general how it's set up, the nib, it writes really wet. So it's great to write with. Gone and touched it again. Now, I went back home to my parents' place one weekend, and I actually found that that Regal, my old Regal. This is the problem with desoldering, is that because you're not actually putting fresh solder on all the time, you've got to constantly re-tin and clean. Yeah, so I will get to the comments very shortly. I'm sorry that I'm ignoring the comments at the moment while I'm chatting away. Truck going in the background. So I went to my parents and I dug out the Regal, and I found that it had, yes, thankfully, a single cartridge, dry, empty, in it. And I actually found the pens from Japan, and they still worked. So the highlighter style cartridge and how well the cap on them had sealed was amazingly good, because I haven't used those pens for 10 years. 10 years, and it was still good. Which was absolutely amazing. So very impressed with the quality of those highlighter style fountain pens. Now, where am I currently at with my fountain pen journey is I've spent too much money, because my friend was talking to me and was like, you should join the Facebook group, the Australian Fountain Pen Facebook group. So I did. And I didn't have any inks.
So somebody was selling some inks, and she was like, oh, you got to get at least these 3 because they're really good inks, and 2 of them are my favorites, and 1 of them is a really good deal for the price that he's selling it at. I then made a really strange decision because I do that. I go all in when I do these kinds of things. And I said to the seller, you've said that there's a discount if you buy more than $75 worth. What kind of discount would you give if I took all of your inks that you had on for sale? Now, I added it up, and everything added up at the price that he was asking was $242. So it's about maybe 200 US. Just thinking rough conversions on the top of my head. And it was for 22 inks, okay? For 22 inks. Different sizes, 30ml bottles all the way up to 50ml bottles. And they said, well, if you're going to take all of them, I can do it for you for 215 Australian, including express shipping. I was like, that sounds pretty good. Went back to my friend and said, this is all happening live, right? While the sale post had gone up on Facebook. And she was like, wow, that's actually a really good price. Because she was pricing them for me to check if they were actually any good. And so I went back to the guy and went, done. And I bought all 22 inks. Now, the thing about that was, after I got the package, I looked at how much shipping was, and it was $34 for express shipping. So in reality, the actual price of the inks was like $180 worth that I paid for the inks if you take out the price of shipping. Now, of course, reality says, you know, I'm paying for the whole lot regardless because I paid for shipping, but I like to think about it as how much, you know, the actual items cost, because shipping is always separate. So now I have a lot of ink. I haven't tried a single one of them because I don't actually have any pens that I wanted to put them into yet. Yes, I can put them into the Regal, but I didn't want to put any of these nice inks into the Regal straight off the bat. I have cleaned the Regal, I've soaked it, and so it's ready to go. I just didn't want to ink the Regal as the first time I've actually inked a pen. But then now you say, but you don't have any other pens. Ah, well, that's where I spent some more money. Now my friend who got me in all of this mess apologized profusely for getting me into this mess. And I said I was looking around to picking up a TWSBI Eco. And she said, I've got one, you can have it. She said that TWSBIs are interesting because they are a very polarizing pen for beginners. You either love them or you hate them. And she belongs in the hate them club. So she didn't want it in her collection, happy to get rid of it, and it's currently in the post on its way to me. Plus some ink samples from her collection as well, which was very nice of her. But it doesn't stop there. I went on Reddit and naturally found the subreddit relating to all of this, and that was my next mistake because I now check PenSwap subreddit daily. For those who don't know what PenSwap is, it's basically like Mech Market. People buy and sell and trade fountain pens. I was looking at what would be good pens to get and how much they were costing and checking prices of what people were selling them for versus brand new and so on and so forth. And I saw a pen that I instantly fell in love with, which was the, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, the Kaweco Brass. Well, the Kaweco Sport in brass. Now I know that they've also got the Lilliput, but the brass, it looks so good. It sounds like an amazing creation. The pictures, you know, patina, it's brass, like keyboards in brass, fountain pens in brass, anything in brass almost would be amazing. And over in Australia, they normally retail for about 150. You could probably get them around 120 on special if you're lucky, and then shipping sometimes if you're lucky as well.
But this seller had it going for 90 Australian, including shipping, and it looked in really good condition, and it was going to come with some cartridges and ink, no converter, and I jumped on it. My wife was just like, oh dear, what have you got yourself into? So now I have a really nice pen that's coming, but it doesn't stop there. So somebody else was selling some really cheap pens, just daily beater pens, for €1 each. They're Chinese cheapies, right? Jinhaos and stuff like that. And they had 13 pens up for grabs as part of a sale, and it was €30 for the pens, including shipping to the US. If you bought them all, then they would give a discount of €25, including shipping to the US. And I said to them, would you ship to Australia? And how much would the shipping cost be to Australia, because your shipping is inclusive of the US only? They said, yes, I'll ship to Australia, and the price difference between them is £8, so it became, 33 pounds or whatever, €33, my bad, not pounds. And I said yes, so I nabbed it. So now I have 13 pens coming as well, just daily beaters, some with cartridges, some with converters, and that's the current state of affair of my collection. Now let's go back and read it. Jonas, you finally got a TS100 thanks to me demoing it here. You can put it away, a couple of power supply bricks, and they work really well. Yes, fantastic little soldering pen. I do have spare tips for the size that I'm using right now, the B3. I bought a spare. I've also got the finer one for SMD work, which I still have yet to use. And I'm using a external hard drive dock power supply, and it works brilliantly. You can also get connectors for these to use with LiPo batteries, so you can make it even more portable if you have a 12 volt cordless drill battery, and using the connector you can turn it into a mobile soldering kit as well. I've seen a couple of videos on the internet where people have done that quite successfully. As long as you've got the right DC connector for it, it would work fantastic. So now I'm just going back through and just adding some leaded solder to some of these that are still bridged, just so it makes it easier to remove them. Trying not to inhale as much rosin smoke. Now, common misconception: if you are watching this live, or if you're watching this on replay later on, the smoke that you are seeing is not lead. A lot of people say you have to use ventilation because you're going to be poisoning yourself with lead. No! My iron is 400 degrees. Lead does not melt or vaporize. Sorry, not melt. Lead will not vaporize until 600 degrees. So I've got 200 degrees of heat happening here. That is not what you're seeing coming off. It is purely the smoke from the rosin. Now, yes, it's just as bad to inhale rosin, but it's nowhere near as bad to if it was lead. Okay? So I just want to make sure that's very clear. I am not, and you are not, inhaling lead fumes. If that was the case, I think the leaded solder debate would be pretty much done and dusted 100%. Nobody would be allowed to use leaded solder. I do apologize. I should have finished reading those comments before I started doing this again, but I will get to them very shortly. Oh, crap. Okay. Mudkips, love my microns, hate the fraying towards the end of their life. The basic pipe, the Piolet Pilot Japanese pen works great. You can change nibs, modify. Stay away from $2 Chinese pens. Twist cartridge, okay. Japanese tips are finer. Yep. Any pen require well-made inks or clean often. Yes, I know. I've heard about that. $6 to $12 for single bottles. I've got bottles which range between sort of $15 Australian, that is, to about $50. So that's part of the range. Diamine is like 3, and Pilot Iro Shinjuku will be 20. Well, see, Australia gets ripped off with prices. So diamines here range anywhere from about 8 to 10 to $30 depending on the size of the bottle, and the Iro Shinjuku goes up to anywhere $40 to $50 a bottle here. Small bottles last a long time, nice to switch, that's fantastic. Super nice bamboo green, okay. Gins need more cleaning, I would expect that, because they are a very cheap pen. And DIY Keyboard says, hi all, I'm in time for pen talk. Yeah, it was just a bit of a deviation there. I'm still, of course, desoldering here. Alex Araldi, thanks for joining us here. And of course, also to DIY Keyboards. Yes, this is that used keyboard that I bought. I am, in fact, desoldering the switches for it to do a bit of a mod. And now, Jonas is saying a multi 18650 pack for a LiPo. Yes, to make it portable. Lower temp, lasts about 45 minutes. Yeah, so, if you run it on 12 volts, the heat ramp is slower. It doesn't come up to temp as fast, but you should probably get a bit more longer usage out of it simply because it would be running at that lower temp. Now this one's being a little bit stubborn. We'll see if that was enough to break the bond internally. Okay, that one flowed beautifully. So I went through and desoldered this the second row one time already, and I've just gone back through and I've added leaded solder to some of the ones that still have bridging on them to make it easier to get out any of the remnants on it, and some of these passes are coming out beautifully right now. And I must say this Soldapullt is absolute champ. I mean, you can see how it's jamming a little bit now at the moment. Of course, just as I said it was an absolute champ, it's now misbehaving. Why you do this to me? What have I got going on in here? A lot of particles. The nozzle is solidly blocked. Oh, massive plug. That's not very good. Okay, so with that down there, I'm just going to charge the handle, and then I'm going to flip it around and push that plug out. There we go. Woo. Now we're back in business. See, nice and simple. The other one that I had, my Chinese one, was all sorts of pain. What I'm going to do, actually, just have to bear with me, is I'm just going to rinse my hands because there's grease from the thread of that here, and I want to clean that off from my hands. Be right back. Ooh, okay. Jam Better's metal sponge in a jam jar. So I'm not using a jam jar because I don't have a small jam jar, but instead I have a takeaway sauce container, and I just cut a hole in the top and I put my sponge in it. I probably need a new sponge because this one's getting a bit beat. But But you know what? It works. You put the tip of the soldering iron to the point and press it again. Yeah, so I tried doing that just before, but the actual plug of metal was actually halfway up, and the conical tip wasn't actually deep enough to get into there, unfortunately. So I had to flip that around and get it out. Now, hello Mac Patterson, you're desoldering a Pro Micro with a solder sucker. Any tips? Don't try and stay on each pin too long. You run the risk of burning out those pads because they are very small. You will get a lot of heat loss because the pins are actually going to go and suck a lot of the heat through to the other side of the pin header as well. So I would suggest that you try and do what's called wicking away first. And what I mean by that is, and this is an exaggeration, if this hex key is the actual header pin and you have a blob of solder down here, touch it and heat it and drag your tip up away. And what will happen is the surface tension will actually spread a lot of that solder up the actual pin. And so when you get down to the bottom and flow it and use your solder sucker and punch that, you're going to be able to get more of that away because you're going to have a thinner film of solder at the base of that header, okay? And also using desoldering wick tends to work quite well for headers, simply because of the fact that they are smaller joins compared to big joins like these ones. Oh, okay. So Mac Patterson says that the Pro Micro is already broken, so they don't really care about the pads. Well then, go to town. Heat that sucker up, put as much solder on it as you like to get a really good amount of flow happening, and it'll probably be just fine. What's wrong with the Pro Micro? Did you break the USB port on it? Okay, so that row, I think, is pretty much done. Are there any knockoff Pro Micros to stay away from or would recommend? So I've only purchased blue Pro Micros and black Pro Micros. Both the blue and black ones that I've used have been perfectly fine. I know that 40% Club has talked about previously in their blogs that green ones historically have had reliability issues. So I've never had a Pro Micro actually fail on me, and I've also not broken off a USB on a Pro Micro, so I actually can't say that I've had a failure rate on Pro Micros. I know that people have had them break off on them, and I know people have had dead ones and bricked ones, so it certainly does happen. It's just that I'm fortunate that I have not had that experience so far. Eesh. Woo. Man, that hurt. I don't know where that bounced off to. That one. I'll find it eventually. Yeah, trying to resolder the USB ports on a Pro Micro is really, really challenging. A lot of people try to do it, and yeah, they're not friendly for that kind of thing at all. Come on. Pin. Get flowing. Now after I finish doing this today, I'm going to have to wipe down
this surface very, very well, because I'm going to have a lot of little shards of leaded solder around. Of course, I have to do that before my daughter comes home from daycare, so that she's not going to go sticking her hands into her mouth and giving herself lead poisoning either. I don't think my wife would be very impressed if that happened. Yeah. Do not think she would be very impressed. Okay, so that one's obviously got some joining still happening there. Bent that pin. It's okay, I've got spare switches if I've munted it. Yeah. Hey Dan MB, it's good to see ya. Same deal, soldered a switch badly, didn't notice, soldered on and the switch didn't respond. Oh, yeah. Now, yeah, probably... You could probably fix that. You know, if you could, depends on where it was, but most Pro Micro builds tend to have them on top of at least 1 or 2 switches. So that's a really, really horrible way to discover. What I recommend these days for people who aren't very confident with their soldering or are quite new and they ask is that you should continuity test your switches to make sure that they're actually soldered well before you put the Pro Micro on, because that'll get rid of a lot of those types of issues. Now, I personally have only had to retouch up a Pro Micro. I haven't had to desolder it, so but retouching up one is almost the same thing, because you need to you know, reflow bits and pieces as required. I don't know why I've just gone and done that, but you know what, that's fine. Just clean that tip and having it ready for again, since I'm still trying to punch out these switches. Okay, that one is kind of coming out, but it's still stuck. There's no solder that I can see on it. That pin's moving freely, and that pin's moving as well. Brute force it. There we go. Whew. Stabilizer might have been getting in the way somewhere, somehow. Seems like all of these are bridging somewhere that I can't see, which is a bit unfortunate. I'll tell you what, if anybody who gets into keyboards and is doing their own keyboards and doesn't have a multimeter, they really should go and get one. It is so useful for a variety of different reasons. I mean, continuity tests for making sure that your joins are good. It's also really important for the purposes of troubleshooting. So, you know, you can test diodes, you can test columns and row attachments, you can test, you know, if you've got the correct polarity for things like LEDs and stuff. Like, there is so much to be done with a multimeter in keyboards, and if you don't have one, you really should. Come on. Yeah, I thought this would actually be relatively quick to do, but learn from my mistake. I am now an hour and a half into this, and I've done a row and like 5 switches. So be prepared that if you ever do need to desolder an OEM board, it could take a significant portion of your life away. Or I'm sure somebody will tell me later on that I should have been using a bigger chisel tip thing, so that way I'd be dumping more heat onto these, and therefore they would come out a lot easier. It's starting to hurt my thumb. Oh. That really hurts. I'm probably just going to have to go through all of these and just reflow them, which I really didn't want to have to do, but seems like they're being troublesome. What I might do is I'm just going to speed through and try and punch these other ones out first, and then I'll come back to the ones that are being difficult. See if that will work or not. You know, when I desoldered my VEA clone to put in my my jades, it was so much easier than this. So I'm gonna say mad props to whoever had done the soldering activities on my VEA clone, because they came out super clean. Whereas this thing is being a downright bloody pain in the backside. Okay. I think it's a little bit both that I'm not getting the solder completely off them, because it's staying inside the inside edge of the pad probably, and also because the plastic's really tight against their plate. It seems to be working better after I've reflowed and then suck up the solder again with the leaded solder. Giving a good heat, and up you come. Giving a good heat, up you come. Gives you a good amount of heat. Looks really clean now. Okay. So Alex is asking, bought 3 Cherry G80s, considering lubing all the switches with a syringe and without desoldering them. Vaseline! No, do not use Vaseline. I would not recommend using Vaseline. Vaseline changes its properties with temperature. It's solid phase when it's cold and quite liquid when it's hot and warm. So you do not want something that will change its properties like that. You really want something that is designed for electronics, because it's also not likely to react with plastics and cause yellowing and discoloring and stuff like that, as well as you want it to be in a consistent state. If it changes its physical characteristics, then it means you're going to get different performance with different environmental situations. So if it's slightly cooler one day, your switches are going to feel more mushy compared to when it's warmer, when it's more of a liquid state. So I would definitely not recommend using Vaseline. A good site to buy keycaps for them, that's really hard, simply because you probably have to mix and match the actual keycap sizes against the profile. I suppose DSA is probably the easiest, but you'd have to go down like a blank route, unless if you want to try and find them vintage or something like that from a supplier or a store. As for jiggling the pins with non-serrated needle noses, yeah, I think I just mentioned that before. It's more that there's solder that is wicking within them. Now, so I have my spool that I designed here, and it works for most part, but the problem with these spools is the actual wire tends to fall off the outside, and when it does, like the height of the actual spool here is not high enough. When it falls off, it gets jammed, which is really bloody annoying. Okay, so we're back onto the next row. Woohoo. You have grease, but yeah, oil. Most people would recommend like a dielectric grease. That's probably the best kind of thing for this type of activity and use. But to be honest, you don't actually need a lot to lube switches with. So yeah, there is what's the paintbrush mod. So you can actually lube the top of your switches by depressing them and using a fine paintbrush. Oh, I think I've got a clog again. I do indeed. So let's just get rid of that. There we go. And that will actually enable you to lube the top of your switches, and that will get some down the sides. I've actually seen that happen in person, and it is effective. It's not a complete lube job, but it does provide some lubrication and dampening, which is pretty good. I would try it myself, except for the fact that I currently don't have any paintbrushes that meet the size requirements to get the bristles into the top of the switch. So yeah, you would need a correctly sized brush for doing that. Yo. What am I replacing the blues with? Nothing. So you probably joined a little bit later, Alex, but I'm actually going to be putting these blues back in, but I'm doing a case / decorative mod to this. So in order to do that, I actually have to take the switches out, which is really more what I'm doing that for than replacing. But what I am actually possibly going to do, I haven't decided yet, is I could also lube these switches. I don't normally lube switches only because I can't be bothered. I tried lubing switches, and that was a real pain with what I had, especially opening switches. But that said, it might be easier in the near future, because one of our supporters, I believe, actually was in here, might still be in here, I don't know if he still is, DIY Keyboards, has been developing switch openers. So been chatting with him about it, and I might be getting one of his switch top openers, which I can check out and test, and that would be really great for helping me lube any switches, really. So hey, I mentioned you here. If you're interested in checking out that, there are posts of it. We did talk about it ages ago, so you know, I'm really looking forward to being able to check out those switch openers. That should help me out heaps. Is your website actually working yet, by the way? Because I think I went there and it was like, this page is still under construction kind of thing. Now, you won't be able to actually put a link into the chat, because I've got that disabled for protective purposes, so randoms can't spam in the chat, but you can type it out using spaces and, you know, /@ and stuff like that in brackets, so people can go check it out if it is working. What are you doing? Okay. Hopefully this row will be a little bit smoother. Getting really into the guts of this now. Well, that one didn't come out as I wanted. Yes, but not open for business. Have it open this week. Fantastic. Can't wait to check it out and visit the site. Should be good. Now, of course, for any of you guys here, you know, if you do have something that you're doing or making, creating, you're organizing, running, you know, keyboard, even non-keyboard related stuff, and you want a community shout out for it, just let me know. Just shoot me an email and I'll be able to mention in the next podcast. So if you have a lot of, you know, stuff going on, details, business, ideas, fundraising, all of that kind of stuff, you know, we're here for the community, and it's not just always about mechanical keyboards. Like, we've just seen it, you know, about half an hour ago or whatever. Heaps of people here also do fountain pens, which is really cool. I know a lot of guys here are also into headphones, which is also really cool. I don't have the money for headphones. I've got a couple of good ones for home use, not for travel. So yeah, if there's any other meetups or sales that you're having, if you're an artisan maker, so on and so forth, just let me know and I'm more than happy to do that shout out for you. I think I need to retin. So the whole thing about the retinning and why you see all that smoke's burning off is because the rosin is it's acidic. It's actually cleaning away the oxides, and using the brass sponge also helps with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through, I think, all the switches now quickly as I kind of can, and then I'll go back and clean up and punch out, which I think should make it a little bit easier than doing it row by row. Maybe. We'll see how this goes. I realize I'm kind of sliding off camera a little bit there. It's one of the hardest things doing a live stream or even recordings when you're not watching what's actually happening. It's kind of like if you're singing and you don't have a earpiece monitor going on kind of thing, and you're in a venue that acoustically is really horrible to find out what you're doing. I used to sing in my younger years at school and choirs and stuff like that and performances, so not getting any feedback monitors in terms of speakers pointing back at you or earpieces is really challenging. And it's no different to if you're doing recordings and live streams. You can consciously forget what's actually happening and you're just making small movements, but then if they don't get captured on the camera, what's the point of even watching? When I do videos, it's a little bit different because I have the ability to actually watch what I'm doing as I'm recording a lot easier. So yeah. Now without trying to make anybody spaz out, I can just swing my webcam around and you can kind of see the setup and what's happening. This is just my ordinary setup for doing videos and streams, making use of what I can with what I've got. I'll just finish this row. I think it's good that I didn't put this on the QuadHands because I am actually applying a bit of moderate force with the iron down on it. I think the QuadHands probably could have handled it, but it probably wouldn't be as stable as being on the table surface. It just means that the lighting's not very good because I'm hovering over it, and you also don't get to see a close-up of what's happening. But that said, it's desoldering. I don't know how many of you people actually came here specifically to learn or know about desoldering as opposed to just hang out and chew the fat because you didn't have anything else urgent or important to do, which of course I fully appreciate. Don't get me wrong on that. I'm also cooking this tip really well. It's got a lot darker, I think, running at 400 than it used to be. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Get into that end row. And up the daisy. Okay. Rightio, let's have a look. Jonas heard about 3D printed headphones kit. Print the arch, couple of parts, put in drivers and wires. That's pretty cool. My 3D printer is not very good anymore, but if it was, I'd certainly be interested in checking those kind of kits out. Top Clack needs an artisan guy for a new segment. I've seen you do an artisan review, should hit him up. Well, Top Clack basically do their episodes at a time that I'm normally working because of the geographic differences between where we're located. So it doesn't really work for me to be, in that sort of broadcast situation, unless of course you're just talking about, recorded episodes, which I would be more than happy to, but I'm not generally that good at self-promoting. So if anything, they'd probably have to come and talk to me and say, hey, we'd love you to be on Top Clack, because I don't really want to go out to them and go, you should put me on. That's just not the kind of person that I am. Alex, ton of questions, 3 a.m. So last one, build a 40% with a 3D printed case, all in one. Throw me all you think about the idea of a 3D mount plate. I think it's perfectly fine. I've printed 3D mount cases. I don't actually have a picture of my fan pad readily here because it's at work, right? But here is an early example of the fan pad. This is a fan pad V1, and there's now a V2 and V3 of this. The V3 actually has plates designed for it. The V2 was a 3D printed version, and the switches actually mount through the 3D printed plate, and it works perfectly fine. So there's no issues at all, in my opinion, about designing and creating a plate mounted case. So yeah. Printing stuff with 3D printing, it's more than strong enough. It's just that if you're going to print at 1.6 mil for switches to clip into, it might be a bit weak.
So besides the very small tabs that you need for the actual clips, I would recommend printing 3mm thickness of the plate around it so you get that good structure. That's really the only tips that I would have in regards to doing that. Wolves on Wall Street, thanks very much for saying that I'm an awesome content creator. My creation style is very different to a lot of other people. I do low effort in regards to how I do my streams and my videos. You know, I don't have fancy stuff happening because it's just a lot of extra effort for, well, prettiness. I'd rather be interacting. I'd rather be, you know, actually getting in and doing stuff raw. I like my reactions to be true and real, and I completely forgot why I was stopping at that row in the first place, because I wanted to swing around and just show you what I have happening here. So you can see there is the actual top cam, and I've got like this little array thing that I tried to set up for lighting, but the LED is actually really glary. You can see the actual stream happening here, and that's just straight up my tiny, very short recording space. I've got a lot of stuff. There's my 3D printer in the background with those red things. I've got my laser printer on that side, and then everything behind me is my wife's sort of workspace and her, you know, there's the overlocker, that white thing, and then there's the sewing machine there in the pink. Then there's the shelves, which are full of fabric and sewing patterns, and you can see the shelf over here is full of her books and patterns and more fabric. So this is actually a small bedroom in our unit that we've converted into a full-blown creation space. Very, very limited space. Of course, down below you can see there is all my grab bags from Signature Plastic, which is all down here. I've got boxes from PCB Way and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, this is apartment living and making the best of what we have with the space that we've got, and utilizing it. So, and that's also why my daughter doesn't have a bedroom. She sleeps out in the living room, and then we have a master bedroom as well. I think it's probably a better use of space for her to not have a room all to herself, because she's only like 85 centimeters and 10 kilos, than to utilize an entire space for her. I mean, it might sound selfish, but when she gets older, and if we're still living here, then we might start thinking about rearranging things in and out to suit. So yeah. While you'll find a lot of people say, like, you know, oh, my kids are my life. Yes, you know, your kids and your family is very important, but at the same time, practicality is really important. Now, I've got to make sure I'm desoldering just switches and not other weird components. Have a look. DIY, like how simple you keep it. Get wrapped up too much in making things perfect. You know, perfection is important. I strive for perfection, but I don't get upset if I don't attain it. That's the reality of it. You know, perfection comes at a price. Perfection comes at a price in time. It comes at a price of cost. For me, function always outweighs form. I would rather something that looks ugly and works than something that looks really good but doesn't work anywhere as well. So, you know, for some people, they want both, and that's fine. Just be prepared to spend the time and money on it. Keyboards by design are functional items. They're engineered to serve a purpose, which is to convert physical keystrokes into a digital output. At least modern keyboards are. You know, typewriters is mechanical finger motions into letters, right? Much the same. So yes, it's nice if it looks pretty, but at the same time, if I just have a bare PCB with switches on it that is rugged enough to survive me beating on it at work, I'll use it. It's as simple as that. Now, yes, you can say, well,
you might as well just be typing on rubber domes. And that's fine. There are keyboards at work that I don't have a choice, that I can't affect, and I still use them. I'm not so elitist to be saying, well, I'm not going to use that because, you know, it's not a mechanical keyboard. That's just silly. What I can control, what I can use, where I can, I'll use something that's nice. I've got that VEA clone from Taobao. Cost me $100. It looks fine. It's not metal, but is it worth spending 5 times the cost of that keyboard to get a real VEA? Ooh, you know, if I had the funds, yeah, sure. But I don't. So having the clone is perfectly acceptable. It does the job. It's enjoyable to type on. It still looks nice. It's just not a aluminium case. Oh, yeah. Get off there. Jonas is talking about LEDs being under the PCB and glow. DIY keyboards. Graphic designer is, so looking good is the function and having a hard time breaking away from that. I'm going to dispute that. The graphic designer is there to relay information. When you design something graphically, the purpose there is to relay a piece of information. Good graphic design is information that is conveyed cleanly, quickly, easily, recognizably, and pleasingly. That is kind of what you're talking about. But at the same time, you can deliberately create graphic design that doesn't actually take necessarily a lot of time, that still does all of that and still serves its function. You know, minimalistic design has a lot in my books. There's a lot of things that people spend time and effort on when they design something because they think it needs that to look good, and that is not always the case, in my opinion. Okay, of course, this is just my opinion, and I'm not a graphics designer, but too much time is spent sometimes on things that don't need it, and I suppose part of that is why, say, Apple was so successful in their iPod campaign at the start, because it was silhouettes, very simple, very minimalistic, and portrayed everything that they needed to. And that is like the top tier of exactly what good graphic design would be about. It's not cluttered, it's not, you know, super fancy, using all these kind of fonts and being just like overwhelming, which some people can do. Don did a keycap review where all the posts were vertically offset up or down depending on what row they were. Printed my keycaps the same, need to change the offset and angles. Are you talking about the hub set? Is that the one that you're talking about, Jonas? And legibility and function should always lead, totally agreed. Yeah. Like, our company that I work for, the business that I work for, they have, you know, a media and communications department, as big companies tend to do. And one of the things that I do like about how they do it is branding is number one. They have a brand guide, which is really easy to understand. The rules in it are really easy. It's straight up, this is the logos you're allowed to use. These are the logos that you use in what situation. This is the spacing. This is the color. These are the fonts. If you can't use this font because it's not installed or not available, then this is the substitute font. Bam. Just like that. It's not overly complicated. When I was at university and I was involved with one of the clubs that I was there,
we got branding guidelines because we had to meet them for uniforms and banners and communications. And this branding document was a mess. They were like, you know, like black and white, color, partial black and white, partial color, you know, the different palettes and the different tones and the spacings and the size of logos and for this, that, and the other. It was terrible to navigate and trying to figure out exactly what was approvable and what was not approvable. That led to us essentially keeping the same logo for many, many years because it was just too much effort to try and update it. Just use the same damn thing on everything in black and white. Life easier. All right, Alex, thank you very much for coming. I hope you had a good time. If you're still here, have a good sleep wherever you came from at 3 a.m. I'm really appreciative of the fact that people are still hanging around watching me do this because desoldering is, to be honest, like deadly boring. I mean, I would have been doing this anyway, so I figured I would stream it. And of course, if I wasn't streaming it, then I would just probably have like Spotify on in the background or something like that, because you can't really watch any TV or movies while you're doing this because you're supposed to be actually watching what you're doing, so you don't burn yourself or damage whatever it is that you're working on. And of course, you know, you're going to get distracted with the movie and you're just going to sit there watching a scene or whatever, rather than keeping on track and actually desoldering. Which some people often have that problem. I feel like a lot of these are going to need retouch-ups because they're not coming off clean. Ambiguous message delivery. Have some guy, he's from the X-Acto knife magazine type era. What? As in like cutting out letters from magazines to make ransom notes? Is that what you're talking about? Rubylith. I don't even know what that means. TS100 question. Does your iron save the default temp used the last time, or do you hit the temp up each time you start? I believe it actually saves it on board. I'm pretty sure it does. Yeah. Because the default, I don't think, is like 300 when you first buy it. I don't know. I've had this thing like 10 months now, so I can't even remember what the default is. I have not actually updated the firmware on this. I haven't flashed it with that new firmware that's available, where you can actually change the heat ramp behaviors and stuff like that. Only because, well, I don't feel it necessary to. I've had people in the past go, oh, you really should update it because you can do this, that, and the other. And I say, that's fantastic, but just because I can doesn't mean I need to or will. So that's great. Thank you for the input. It's not that I'm not aware of it, so it's just I don't need it. I'm a very that splutter, rosin splutter, evil. It's not that I don't know about it, it's just that I don't have a direct application to need to change my heat ramps and behaviors and stuff like that. Okay. Rubylith is where you have to cut the artwork and photograph it to edit a page. Oh, okay. Like Yeah, super old school kind of stuff. I mean, of course it makes sense that there's an actual term for it, but that is something that I've just learnt Ruby with. Okay, cool. Is there a lot of competition for graphics designer work out there? I mean, I know somebody who finished university in digital communications and design, and they wanted to be a graphics designer, and they had a really hard time getting a job anywhere in particular, and they ended up working as a graphic designer for a banner company. So they just manufacture banners, like, you know, for events and stuff like that. And while I won't say that she's unhappy where she is, like, I kind of get the feeling that she doesn't feel that her career is exactly the most fulfilling, because, you know, it is graphic design, but it's not necessarily super meaningful or exciting graphics design. Like, I don't know if I'm conveying that very well, but I'm sure you know exactly what I mean. This thing is starting to get clogged up again. There we go, shaking out a lot of bits and pieces. I should probably open it up again and clean it out. Definitely gonna have to clean up my desk very well. Oh, look at all those bits and pieces coming out. Heaps. So much lead. Well, a mix of lead and non-lead, but how could they had a firmware to make an oscilloscope out of a TS100 screen? That would be like the world's tiniest screen. Lots of designers, not a lot of placements, coming in every week looking for design work. Yeah, that sounds pretty tough. Alright, DIY keyboards, thanks for coming along. I'll catch you next time. Hey, sup? Hello. It's good to see you here. Thank you for joining us on this slow-moving desoldering live stream. Where I am slowly making my way through this keyboard. Is this the first time you've joined us? I don't recall having seen your name before, sup? If it is, welcome, welcome. If it isn't, sorry, but it's great to see you chatting, not just lurking. Not that there's any problem with lurking, so yeah. I don't know how late it's getting for some of you guys, but it's probably starting to get a bit late, isn't it? Probably around 10 o'clock for some of you, if you're in the US. Getting down to the tail end of the bulk of the desoldering. Of course, there's going to be some of these that will need touching up to get rid of those little bits of bridging that are still happening. The other thing about lead-free solder is that it doesn't liquefy as nicely when you look at it when it melts, whereas like with leaded solder it has this shimmer behavior, so you can tell straight away when it's ready to go, like when you need to suck it up. I find that with this lead-free stuff, it doesn't really give you that same visual behavior. Alright, Jonas, not a problem. Thank you very much for the luck, and yeah, I hope the rest of it goes smoothly and I don't burn myself anymore. And Sup, you have been here before. You changed your name. Ah, okay. Yeah, EU time zones are quite challenging for Australians, I would say, because it's not exactly opposites like a lot of the US time zones tend to be, but that in between. So I know exactly what you mean, because it has been challenging in the past also for us to have people from the EU on, like Joris. But it's good to see that you've been able to make it today. So of course, feel free to throw any questions and thoughts my way that you want me to chat about. Some of these guys have done that with some of the other topics earlier, while you know, I'm just slowly plugging away at this thing. I talked a bit about fountain pens earlier because it's my latest side hobby that is channeling funds away from this, but there's functional reasons for me doing that, so I can sort of justify spending in that context. Come on. Where in the EU are you hailing from too, by the way, Sup? It's a very big place, the EU. Although I suppose technically it is smaller thanks to Brexit. I don't even know what the deal is with that. Are they still doing it? Or are they backflipping? I don't keep up with those crazy British people. Now this one's going to be interesting because this is one of those corroded switches, so it's not really transferring heat onto it at all, and you'll see that even with fresh solder it's not really wanting to play. Now I've got some fresh solder on a ball and I'm just circling that pin with it because I'm getting it hot so that the flux burning off my leaded solder, there we go, will allow me to get through that corrosion, and that has worked. Excellent. Now there's this dodgy diode here and I don't want to touch it. I don't want to reflow it because for the moment it still works, and if it works, if it ain't broke, at least in a corroded part, don't touch it. I don't have any replacement SMD diodes for it, so that's the other reason, because if I stuff it up then it's gone. Netherlands. Did you go to the latest meetup in Stockholm? I know it's, you know, probably a while away, but is that like, would that have been the closest meetup for you? I know that Sendrum had told me it was a good meetup, good number of people turning up to last year's turnout, so I've known of a young lady there actually
for many years, but I've never actually met her in person. Be nice one day to go to the Netherlands and get to meet her and her partner. I actually don't even know if they're engaged or married or whatever, but geez, how many years has it been? 19 years. 19 years. German meetups are the closest one, but as a student, 80 euros to get there is a lot of money. Yeah, 80 euros is a lot of money in any context, to be honest. When I was a student, 80 euros would be like nearly 3 months of the train fare to get to uni. So I can certainly appreciate that. Need to have like live streaming meetup type of thing where for those who can't make it, like I know that people do live streaming from meetups, but you don't get to see the keyboards. So I just had a harebrained idea now that what they should do in countries that have affordable high-speed internet available for meetups, because Australia doesn't, is you could set up like a webcam stream of a desk spot where people basically come with their keyboards, sit down, put it in front of the webcam, and then people who are watching the stream can see it, and they can explain and talk to the audience what their keyboard is, what it's about, and then do a little bit of a typing test, and then they get up and then somebody else can come and sit down. So it's kind of like, yes, you can't make it there and walk around and try the different keyboards, but maybe people can bring the keyboard experience to you so you can get to see and hear and listen to people's keyboards. What do you reckon? Would that kind of idea be suitable for meetups? Hey there, Mendez. Yes, Australia and affordable high-speed internet. Did you know, Mendez, that 5G mobile internet is technically faster than Australian NBN, and the US is like already implementing 5G, whereas like Australia is just saying we know about it, we're kind of thinking about it, but we don't actually know when we might implement it. Like, seriously, you've got internet that is getting whooped by mobile technology and it hasn't even been fully rolled out, and they're deliberately delaying implementation of better technology. Like, that is the state of affairs in Australia right now for internet. It's just bollocks. But what do you reckon? Should we try and do that on in December? Which actually reminds me, I need to follow up on that community stuff. So for people who aren't aware, by the way, Mendez here, who's just talked in our channel chat, is from Tay Keyboards. So if you got any questions about Tay Keyboards, now is a good time to chuck them at Mendez and put him a bit under the pump and grill, because he's a pretty cool dude. Stand-up guy, and very knowledgeable on a lot of keyboards. 144p stream. Well, I have expensive internet by comparison, and that's also another reason why I never want to move from this apartment, because I might have to go to crappy internet. And then I'd have problems doing anything, including recording quality podcasts. So this is another one of those corroded switches. So once again, it's not heat transferring very well. I'm going to lay down some fresh solder and try and get that rosin to help out clean it up. There we go. Come on, do your job. Charge my laser. That pad doesn't look very healthy. Hopefully it hasn't been munted. Okay, so I've done all of them very quickly, and I'm just going to go through and touch up with some solder on the ones that I know are going to be problematic visually. Add some more solder to them. See if that will help when I come back on another pass. Might as well just flip this around. Can work that way. Seems like a lot of these didn't get very clean suction. Some of these did. You've discovered you're a linear kind of guy. Oh, honey. Well, that's okay. Clickies aren't for everybody. And if you didn't get the reference, I have no idea what your gender is, by the way. I wasn't being genderist. It's from How I Met Your Mother. Because they were talking to one of, I don't know, one of Ted's girlfriends or one of Barney's girlfriends. And yeah, she wouldn't say he was being clueless, but one of those things. Linears are really popular for a lot of people, but I don't know, it's just not my bag. And that's fine. I don't expect people to be the same as me, and that's what customizable keyboards is all about. Linears for you, I get to keep all the non-linears for me. Okay, so 5 keyboards though. How long have you been into keyboards for you to say that you're going a bit wild with 5 keyboards? That is not sounding very healthy. Built a Tennessee with silence for work. Bought a KBD fan 75 with yellows. Of course I'm a dude. Mechanical keyboards as a hobby tells you what my gender is. I don't know. There's plenty of ladies out there who are into mechanical keyboards. So you know, it's not necessarily 100% clear cut that just because you're into MKs that you're a guy. And of course, the phrasing of words also. Okay, there we go. Full suction restored. Let's try that again. So here we go. You're gonna get reflowed clean. Should have done that over the getting another gem. Oh. There we go. I really like this solder pour. Like, it is super chunky and reliable. I don't think my Chinese cheapie would have survived this kind of abuse that I'm giving it right now. It's well worth the $30 or $35 or whatever it was I paid for it. Oh, my thumb's getting tired though. Oh. Hey, wow, I answered Mendez's question without even looking. Sup, bit more than a year. Okay, 5 keyboards within a year. Yes, I answered it somehow. Sell my Philco HHKB Pro 1 and your Alp 64. Yeah, okay. I've got a Pro 2 and I don't use it. I just have it because of collecting. I mean, I could use it more, but I just love my Leopold more. It's as simple as that. Don't have any Alps keyboards, so that's actually something that I would be looking towards getting at some point in time in the future. Wow, this is really sharding up again. I think we jinxed it, Mendez. We started talking about how well it's been performing, and it's either that or I'm just hammering it with so much. Hammering it. It's doing a really good job though. Some NOS YOLO Alps Smooth. Okay. I've only really tried Alps boards at meetups, and I did have a play with an Alps board that I was fixing up for somebody. So they had a switch that had really bad chatter on it, and I removed it and replaced it for them. And besides that, that was really the limits of my Alps experience. I think part of the issue for me is that also because actually no, I do have an Alps board. I've got the YiHua one that QuadHands sent me from Japan. Yeah, the Philco. What am I saying? That one's interesting because it is a clicky, but it's like a really steppy click. It's not a smooth switch at all. I wouldn't say that it's unpleasant to type with, but it's not one that I would immediately say I really want to type with that keyboard, because it's not. It just doesn't feel as good as obviously other switch types. I don't know if it's a matter of that you could clean the switches out or mod them or restore them a bit so they feel better, nicer, but in their current state they're not really the smoothest of switches. You're getting clogged again. That is such a good resounding thunk when it works properly. Okay. I'm gonna have like massive forearms from working this pump. My team is gonna be like, so what did you get up to on your day off? I desoldered a keyboard and burnt myself twice. They're gonna be like, okay. Right, our boss is weird. And I just got a message. We're now 2.5 hours into this, and we're getting into the home stretch. At least what I believe is the home stretch. I'm hoping will be the home stretch. Come on. There we go. That should be it. Okay, so just going to re-tin that. Now I've had this kilo of solder for ages. I've got a kilo of solder right here, a kilogram of 0.7, and I'm like nowhere near using it all up either. Gonna invest in some of those desolder and solder suckers in one. They are like 12 bucks. So this one that I got, it's German. Is it German? No, American Soldapullt. Where are they from? That's the actual brand Soldapullt. No, it's made in the USA. They're not wrong. It does have a very powerful vacuum. It's strong. It's lightweight. And yeah, this is the edition that has the metal barrel in it, and I got it for the extra reliability on that. You know, it's metal. It's going to last better. And also, just having that spring externally is such a big deal. It really is. Like, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it is. Your spring doesn't get clogged up. It doesn't get jammed. If you have any issues with it, you can see what's happening. Whereas my cheap one, the spring was internally in the barrel, and it kept vibrating itself and rotating and disengaging from the mechanism, which was an absolute pain, because every time you opened it to try and reset it, you just get shards everywhere. Like, I'm getting a little bit, but nowhere as much as when I had that cheapie. Right, so time to hurt my thumbs a bit more and punch out these switches. Of course, the first one I try probably doesn't want to come out. There we go. And it's free. Right, so that one doesn't want to come out. That one's out. That one doesn't want to come out. It really hurts. Just thinking, what have I got here that I can use? It's ew. All right, let's see if that will help any, maybe, perhaps. Okay. All right, that one didn't want to come out still. Nope.
Look at all of that dirt that's just coming off that. Oh boy. Nope. I don't know which one is the SS02, but yeah, I'd have to have a look at it later before I'd be able to comment on it. There's a lot of solder suckers and designs out there, from bulb suckers to electrically driven vacuum suckers. Wow, so many from this row is not coming out. Bam. Whew. Ow. Man, the bottom of my hand, look at that. It's all red and hurting from sharp electrical components poking me. Plus being covered in solder. Alright, you don't want to come out either. You're free. You're free. Ew. Yeah. Okay. That's the majority of them. So there's still a couple that are hanging around. Whoa. Okay. So now that I've taken this plate off, now that I've taken a lot of these switches off, look at that. Look at the corrosion that's present right there on that. Man, you cannot tell me that this keyboard has not somehow seen something happen. There's some happening on that one. There's some happening on that one. What? Like, what the heck? Even over here, there is like corrosion galore. Like, what the smeg is happening on that? There is no way that this keyboard did not have some kind of spill event. Now, like I said in the video, you know, the seller might not even be aware that they had a spill. Somebody else could have spilt on it, or it could have been even at the factory completely without their knowledge. But this keyboard definitely has experienced spills. Okay, so my iron's cooled down to 200, and now it's ramping back up because the motion sensor in it has detected that I've picked it up again. And so I'm gonna have to retin it and clean it. And see if I can get these going again. Yeah, so you may not have seen it yet, but I have a video, latest video, which was around this keyboard on what to look for when you inspect a secondhand keyboard that you pick up. So I bought this keyboard secondhand. It was relatively cheap. It was 35 bucks, which is what they were asking for it. And
I got it, and I of course did a examination of it, and I found that there was evidence of like corrosion. And I went back to the seller and I asked them, you know, have you had any spills on it? Now, I wasn't going to get upset about it simply because I only paid 35 bucks and I didn't have a lot of expectations, but they claimed that they hadn't. And well, I mean, look, you can straight out call somebody a liar, or just go, okay, well maybe something happened and they just aren't aware of something happening. But it's good to know, at least my sort of spidey senses of my examination does indicate that something was up with this. So yeah, of course I'm not going to name any names about the seller, and they're local and they're relatively new to the scene, sort of, and it's just one of the risks that you get when you pick up a second-hand keyboard. Now, if this had this kind of damage and it was brand new, I would be pretty upset. But that said, technically by opening it up and checking it like this, you know, you would have voided warranty. But if it wasn't working, then, you know, you'd have rights to check it out. So yeah, I mean, I did ask if he had any spills on it, and he said that he hadn't. No matter how big or small, he outright said no spills. So that's, I mean, if they say that, then well, that's the limit of what you can ask. Either they honestly did not know or did not remember that there was a spill or an event that happened to it. Ah. Yeah, the PCB is alive. It worked when I tested it, so you know that's something. And hopefully my desoldering job today isn't going to have killed it. I hope not, but you never know. Man, there is a lot of particulate crusted in this. I'm definitely gonna have to give it a good clean. Showing my Asian heritage there, a good clean. Now I'm gonna have to wash my hands because I got too much onto it to my liking. The tip's actually pretty resistant. Like, it's got a little bit of flaring on it, but that's to be expected because I'm pressing it up against the 400-degree tip here. But it's not really melting as far as it goes, so that's all good. I'll be right back again. Okay, so we're back to working. Let's try and find which switch it was. It was this one. But the good part is at least you can definitely buy these replacement tips. But I think this one's going to last a while before I need to replace it anyway. Okay. No more switches on that row. On to that one. Just going to manually. That one going. Ah, come on. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to give it a really, really good clean after this video, after this live stream, because it's starting to just jam up way too frequently now. They're coming out really clean. Holy crap. Like, I'm literally able to wick out like an entire ball of solder against this. Suppose it's effective in what it's doing, isn't it? Bottom row. For the moment. Okay. See if this will come out. Why do you not want to come out? Huh? There we go. Oh, that really hurt. He's out. That one was easy. World's most horrible clunking sounds. Are we free? Whew, we've done it. We've managed to get it all done in under 3 hours. So there we have it. We have now successfully desoldered this entire keyboard. Oh man. Back of my hand hates me. I am going to put these switches back in. I took it apart because I'm going to do a mod to this, a decorative mod more than anything else. Yeah. So that's probably what's going to happen. Dirty stabilizers, plate mounts. They're pretty solid in there, but you can see, well, maybe we'll see if the camera will want to focus it or not. The back of the plate, like you can see, there you go in the reflection, how bubbly that is. Like, man, that is such a bad quality paint job on this thing. They sprayed it or something, or just dip painted it, because there's just like lumps all over this. Like, just look how bad that is. Quality of that is just pretty shocking. You can see it's really, angle that reflection, there you go. Look at that. Look how bad that bubbling and rippling is. It's just terrible quality paint job on this. And I mean, that could just be straight up corrosion lifting onto the paint as well. So Cool, so that's done. You should push the pins to the left with a flat screwdriver. Most of the time it's super small solder holding the pin to the pad. Yeah, I probably could have with the whole screwdriver thing, but it's too late now, isn't it? Everything in hindsight. So let's have a look at the condition of the PCB. Now everything is taken off it. So this is the top of the PCB. Look at that. Like, you cannot tell me that this is not corrosion affected at all. Like, you got some misting here, you've got corrosion happening there, you've got it along the bottom row here, very distinct. You've got some happening there. Like, this is not rosin fumes. Now, people might say, oh, it could be deposit from soldering. This is on the wrong side of the PCB for it to be deposit and to be that prevalent. And around the actual switch, like, that is straight up corrosion. You can see the actual oxides on those LED pads. It's just, man. And of course there is a ground. Active ground? I don't know. It's weird. Rightio. So, job done. Job done. This thing has been desoldered. Whether I actually put this sucker back in or not is yet to be seen. I might just end up creating a hand wire out of this, to be honest. I mean, we'll just have to see how that goes. So, of course, in terms of good cleanup and preparation, so I'm just going to try and get some of that waste into the bottom of this. You probably can't really see it very well, but there is a lot of solder now sitting on the bottom of this, which I'm going to have to clean out again. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-tin, and then I'm going to coat and preserve my tip. So what I'm doing here is I'm just cleaning it and just put a bit more of that on. I'm going to scrub it nice and clean using my brass scrub. I might need a new one. And then I'm going to unplug it. So now it's going to start losing temperature, but what I want to do is, while it's still hot and capable, I'm actually going to put solder on it. I'm going to form a ball of solder on the tip of this pen, and then I'm just going to hold it upright so that that blob of solder is going to cover the tip, and then it's just going to cool down. Now I don't want to blow on it, because if I blow on it, I'm going to blow that blob of solder right off the end of that tip. Now it won't take too long to cool down to a point where it will start to form a skin, and it's deceptive because it's still hot inside, and it won't solidify until it's under about 200 degrees. So going from 400 down, it will actually take a couple of minutes for it to be fully hard enough that it won't drop off. Now what that's going to do is it's going to cover and protect the tip of your soldering iron, so you're not going to get oxides forming on the surface of it, which can corrode and pit the actual soldering iron tip. And when you reheat this later on to use it the next time round, you're going to have a good contact of heat, and it'll transfer and go out. So the outside will actually be corroded from just oxidation, but it won't be damaging your tip. So you'll actually preserve your tip better doing this. So that I've been told. Okay, I generally do this now. It doesn't really use up very much solder at all, and it doesn't take very much time, but it just means you're going to get better life and performance out of your tip. So now that it's actually cooled, you can see how there's like just a big fat blob on the end of that. If it'll, yeah, so you can see how there's just that ball. Okay, and so that can now sit in the holder to fully cool off, and it's good. So that's it. We're done. We're done. 3 hours, 2 hours 55 from start to finish. I've desoldered, stripped, taken the caps off a DEC Francium 87, which had really horrible lead-free joints. So thank you, of course, to everyone who's spent their day, evening, afternoon, wherever you're from, checking out the stream. And yeah, make sure you check out our other videos if you're new to all of this. You can check out our podcast. You can check out my Instagram with the random odd pictures I take here and there. I'll probably take a picture of this, actually, to be honest. And yeah, and of course our podcast series, which you can find at www.theboardpodcast.com. Now, before I click off and go, have some lunch, clean up and everything else, do you have any questions for me? Thanks, Mendez. It was a heck of a journey, I'll tell you that right now. My hands, I burned twice accidentally touching that and everything else in between. I've got a lot of crap to clean off my desk. I'll have to take some of these switches apart, I think, and clean them too. Some of them might need... Man, what the... Okay, so while you guys are thinking about questions, if you have any, I'm going to see if I can show you this switch. Come on. Did I rip a pad off with that? I think I ripped a pad off. So the question is, which pad did I rip off? Found it. There it is. I ripped a pad off there. That one hasn't been... That one's got something stuck in it. It's a bit of solder that's... Solder leg. It's a leg. So it looks like I ripped a leg off a switch as well. So that's real good. What other damage did I do to this? I think that's the extent of it. But to be honest, I'm not surprised that I ripped the pad off that, because it's corroded. So good job. Good job. That pad looks like, yep, that pad's gone too. So 2 pads gone. 2 pads gone. I'm sure I'll find that pad somewhere in here. I mean, look at that. Look at that. The corrosion's right on the bottom. Anyway, Sup, thank you very much for coming along. And yeah, Mendez, I'll catch you later. Have a good day. Yeah. Alright, people. Thank you for coming along. I hope you had fun. Maybe. Feel my pain. And of course, please hit like and share. And if you feel like donating anything to support us, either, you know, with stuff to play with, stuff to review, stuff to build, more than happy. And you can always just hit me up. Just send me an email to theboardpodcast@gmail.com and we can chat. All right. Thank you very much. Of course, I'll need to do the countdown before I hit the stop stream because there's always that delay. So, yeah, until next time, as always, happy clacking. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 seconds.